Welcome back to The Change Physician. I am Melissa Cady, the Challenge Doctor, with my co-host from the West Coast, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro, bringing you some Saturday salutations on the first day of July. Can't believe it's already July, but it definitely feels that way in Austin, Texas. How are you doing, Kevin?
I am doing really well, particularly since I don't live in Austin, Texas.
Yes, you're probably not feeling drought-ridden. For those of you,
you guys got the heat dome, right?
Triple digits for sure. I think our high is like yesterday and today was maybe upper 90s. But our heat index hit 117 degrees. I think before we talked last time, and we may have mentioned it, but yeah, it's been crazy. Anyone joining us today, if you're don't know what the Change Physician is all about, make sure to go to thechangephysician.com. You can learn more about us. If you see this on the Challenge Doctor, it's just being cross-posted from the Change Physician Facebook page. So you can hit like on the Change Physician page if you like to keep up with our occasional Saturday salutations. Of course, it's summertime. We're lightening up the load and playing some replays of some great conversations with other physicians or guests. And occasionally we do little host chats where we talk about random events and things. So why don't I just say on our podcast, let's see here. We have our Thursday throwbacks coming out. So today is the first. This past week we had Dr. Leif Dahling. I think I mentioned it last time. The Physician on Fire physician. Make sure to catch that one. Some great newsletters to get to your email box or inbox. And the one coming up is Dr. Kelly Casperson, You Are Not Broken podcast. You want us to have any comments on that?
I comment on both of them.
Go ahead.
No, I really like Leif. So Leif does Physician on Fire webpage. I guess it's do we call them blogs anymore? Anyway, he did the interview, and I really like him because I think he's really genuine, particularly in a space where a lot of people are not genuine. And so I enjoy it. And he usually, I like his newsletter a lot too, where he curates kind of the whatever he calls it, the Sunday best, and he has good stuff. So I like talking to him, and I think he's a good person, and I definitely encourage people to kind of check it out. For physicians, it's great because it provides a lot of physician perspective. But if you're not a physician, there's some interesting stuff. If you're interested in kind of that financial independence, retire or transition early and kind of that kind of thing, that's good. And then Kelly, what can you say about Kelly? Kelly's always a hoot. Right? Yeah, she's fun.
Bundle of energy.
She's a bundle of energy, and she's in a really has kind of carved out a significant presence in a space that is really interesting to most people, but most people don't want to talk about it. Or at least I should say, need somebody else to start the conversation, because hers is a sex podcast, and particularly, I don't want to say when women get older, but really focused on women, and great stuff. And she's definitely a good person to talk to about that. The podcast is fun, and she's got a lot of energy. So those are both really good episodes.
Yeah. Well, with the nature of how our environment or society is, and everything's pretty much out there, and you can get a lot of bad information. I think people, especially physicians that dive into that space, need to be comfortable. There's been kind of a history of avoidance of topics and not making patients uncomfortable or whatnot. But I think the biggest lesson I've learned and I guess the first 50 years of my life almost, is that if you're comfortable, it helps the other person be more comfortable talking about it. So, she's definitely in that category of, it's just very, nonchalant about it. Like, it's just, this is just, it's part of the human body, and we need to talk about these things and stop, believing these myths that aren't true and all that. So I love what she's doing.
Yep. I would agree. Yeah. I would concur.
Yeah. Anything exciting or new, or anything you'd like to share from the last week?
Well, there's always something to share. In this one, I guess I'm getting a little bit more of aware of like little things in life that like bring you joy. And this is going to sound really dumb. So I had an iPhone 6 and I've had it since 2016. And I got it replaced once when I was getting the battery done, like 2 years into it, and the whole thing broke. And so they gave me a whole new phone and all this stuff. and I've not wanted to get a new phone. Like I just don't want to deal with a phone, and you know, having to get used to it, and the new ones with whatever. Anyway, so and I like the home button, and all the new phones really didn't have the home button. So needless to say, though, my phone was getting old. It was having a harder time. And my wife has this, we got a Prius this year, and it communicates with your phone, which is like amazing when you drive 20-year-old cars and you're like, oh my God, look at this stuff. This has like screens in your car. And it was really irritating because I was taking her car on longer trips, like when I was going down into mid and southern Oregon. And you want to put music on, and it was having a hard time talking to my phone, and it was driving me crazy. And then finally we were driving up to Seattle a couple of weeks ago to stay with some friends. We rented a house up there, which we talked about, I think, last week. And I just couldn't take it anymore. I was like, we had stopped someplace else for something else that had fallen through. And I'm like, screw it. And we walked over to the Apple store, talked to the guy. He's like, you know, it's like a billion people in there. And do you need somebody? I'm like, all I want is this particular phone. And walked in, grabbed it, bought it, and was out in like less than 10 minutes, probably 5 minutes. And it's going to sound stupid, but this is I think it's called the S or something. It is basically my old phone, just upgraded. So it's new. Like it provides me such joy, because I'm like, I just love it. I'm like, it works. It's fast. It doesn't, you know, the home button is a little bit different, but maybe I'm getting old, but I'm just so happy with this thing. And
the Prius talk well to each other. Oh,
they just talk like nothing, like they're old chums, you know? And no, it's just nice. I just, you know, I'm not a huge tech person. Like some people like to crawl into that stuff and like want the newest and greatest. I literally, all I want something is to do what I need it to do when I need it to do it, and do it smoothly and easily. And that's literally, it's kind of like my life for everything. So I don't want like all this, you know, the other thing is you buy these, this was $440, which still is ridiculous, but people are paying over $1,000 for a phone. For a phone. Come on. I mean, for what? Like I probably, how many, 10% of the people use all the stuff? Probably less than 10% of the people know exactly what's all on the technology on the phone to use it effectively.
Exactly.
So, anyway, I'm very, very, very pleased with thing. And it's also red. And I got the red just because I'm like, I'll just get something different. But apparently this puts some proceeds to AIDS and AIDS related causes, which I'm happy to support, which is cool. So yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with being excited about that. Especially
you know, and I think it brings us this other theme of like just becoming really, really aware of when things impact your life. And I would say in particularly, I mean, we're pretty aware of the negative things. But the little things that we have, it's the little things grow up to be big things, right? And the things that you're interacting with frequently is it's always interesting. I mean, just if we focus more on those, we can actually increase fullness in our life without necessarily changing a whole lot of what else is going on. And I'm not saying we need big experiences and we need small experiences, but we tend to overlook the small experiences and over rely on the big experiences. So we're leaving these big gaps between like big experience, peak, and then low. And it's like, well, if you can have a big experience, which is cool, and then pull up those little ones, you're kind of lifting up that overall sort of valley of experience a little bit more. And I don't know. I appreciate little weird things like this now. And I it's kind of fun.
Yeah, a lot of times
certainly makes my life better and doesn't really do much. Doesn't, you know, no negatives to it. And
yeah, there's still a theme there, paying attention and being aware. Like if you're putting your attention to it and, I don't know, having gratitude for it, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Well, how many things do we take for granted in any sort of like air conditioning, like where you are now, right? Air conditioning is extraordinarily common now in the United States. But like I remember growing up and we didn't have air conditioning. Granted, it wasn't as hot. I lived in northern Nevada. I think it's hotter now. But I remember every summer, you know, we put fans throughout the house and you have the windows open and you did it and it was hot and I mean you survived it. But in this day and age, we're comfortable all the time. You know, and it's changed where we live and it's changed how we experience summers and it's changed. So, you know, gratitude for that kind of thing, or being able to, I don't know, go someplace when you want to go someplace, or we complain about flights and stuff, but really I think people now, flights are so much easier to access, and we complain about costs and everything, but I don't think they're certainly not what they were 50 years ago or 60 years ago, when people was only for a certain select people could actually afford to go on the flights. So the access to things, I don't know. And with all the negativity we have in the world, it's really just good to remember that there's a lot of good stuff. I mean, and much better, I think, than most, than you're going to be led to believe if you just kind of pay attention to what's being kind of broadcast, all the time. I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff too, but there's a lot of good stuff.
Yeah. Well, if you want to, it's just like talked to someone the other day. They're like, I don't really watch a lot of news. Like, there's like, you kind of have to be careful, because it's just like anyone go down a rabbit hole, so where you put all your attention all the time, it's going to influence your brain. We talk about this all the time on the podcast.
We should, I don't know what we should change instead of the change position, the aware physician. Maybe that's better. I don't know.
Yeah. Who knows? Well, my recent thing is, so I put this Dexcom, the glucometer, continuous glucose monitoring. We had done it just initially. My husband and I it was just more a curiosity thing, a wellness thing, to see how, just kind of empower you to understand how you respond to different foods. And my husband, and most time they say put on your abdomen, but my husband wore it. It's about 2.5, 3 weeks, the sensor. So there's like the sensor is this, I don't know if you see it. And then there's a transmitter right here. So there's like a little tiny fine needle that's in there that picks up, the glucose levels. Apparently it's not too different from the arm to the stomach, but so I just recently, this past week, did that just to see, and it was very obvious when I had a handful of jelly beans. My blood sugar did something it wasn't normally doing. So I think just those visuals, it makes you aware. You can't really hide the responses of your body. So that's something recently, just was having fun with that, because I have 2 more, this one, and have 1 more sensor, and they're pretty expensive. So like, I didn't want it to go to waste. So my husband was done with it after the first cycle. So I got the second, and then I'll try it on the abdomen, see if it really looks any different. But I think it's nice to just, I don't know, if you have the access to something like that, and it just maybe makes you a little more accountable. Sometimes it's nice to have that. Just trying to think of anything else that was exciting over the past week. Did I cut you off, by the way? Did you have anything else you wanted to share?
No, I always have stuff we can share, but yeah.
Let's see here.
Well, I want to add on to that, if you don't mind, because you sort of added on to this awareness thing. And this is like, I'm not like a big tech person, and I certainly I'm not one of those people when they gravitate to, you have to have this or whatever's fancy piece of technology, like, because there's this fine line. There's people who are really unaware of health, period, and are just doing whatever they do. And then I think when you start moving, up in a little bit more probably education, people are more aware of things. And then there's this hyper end where I think they start to over obsess. Like, I'm talking about like the far end, and that gets a lot of kind of, podcasty, YouTubey things too, where people are like monitoring every single thing. But I do think doing little interventions just to become aware of day-to-day behaviors, and so you're a little bit more intention, has some good effects. Like glucose monitoring. If you're paying attention to the foods you eat, and you then maybe even consciously or unconsciously then selecting different types of foods based on what the readings are. Right. Or, that thing with just taking a picture of your food before you eat it, like not to post it on Instagram per se, but just to be aware of what you're eating. And there's weight loss associated with that, because now you're more intentional and more aware of what it is. You're not, anything like that, I think is important. Or, what's the saying of what you measure matters. So doing something that you can measure consistently for an activity that is vital to a result that you want, like tracking your workouts or tracking weights if you're doing something with lifting.
Right.
It's just such a powerful little thing. So how do you incorporate these little mindful bits into your day-to-day activity? I'm like, how would you do it as a physician? Like, I mean, I guess if you were trying to be more efficient in your clinic, you could literally do things like track the average, when you're done with a visit, just track the time that took. So that now you're now looking at how often or how much time you're spending in a particular encounter, or particularly how much time you're spending charting, or just becoming aware of those little things to kind of, it will subtly infiltrate your behavior in generally positive ways if you know what it is that you're monitoring and why you're monitoring it. So
yeah, well, even like patient outcomes, like a lot of people just assume everything was great, and if you go back and you really like ask the patients how they're doing or their symptoms that they had, and like and I've done that myself, like you get, just because you don't hear anything doesn't mean there wasn't a problem.
Oh, so yeah,
you definitely can discover some things that can help you rethink the way you practice too.
Hand washing, God, I mean, everybody's like, oh, hand washing. Well, let me tell you, that was a big deal in when I was in residency, when they started actually monitoring hand washing, and they started looking at the data behind hand washing, and they started looking at hospital-acquired infections and hand washing. People thought they were all clean, and man, people weren't clean.
Rude awakening. Yeah.
It's like,
yeah. Well, I think everything we're just saying is just avoiding. It's trying to minimize denial and make yourself aware. Like if you don't, like you said, if you're not measuring it, that can change things. So
mindlessness is fine when everything's perfect, but generally things aren't always perfect.
No, not at all. Trying to think of anything else. There was something else I wanted to bring up, but I
interrupted you.
Blanking on what that was. But I can tell you right now, I'm just really enjoying. Right now, my operating room life is a little bit less busy right now, which has been giving me time to do other things and enjoy some outdoors, and been getting a little bit of suntan just from 100+ degrees, just going out for like 30 minutes. But yeah, it really shows you too, like with this kind of weather, like what the resiliency is of some of these plants. Like, I mean, can you imagine that kind of heat on? It really is a struggle. But I did harvest dozens of peppers and a few like Armenian foot-long cucumbers. Just did my first pickling this morning. Found a recipe online, and some salt and some onion and some garlic, and threw a whole bunch of cucumbers that I cut, because I was like, I'm not going to eat all these cucumbers like this fast. They're going to go bad. So, and I happen to have a whole bunch of grape leaves, which they said in this recipe blog thing that if you, anyone can comment if they don't agree, but that if you lay in the tannins from the grape leaves, if you lay them in before you press down everything in the brine or the salt water, that it helps keep the crispness in the cucumber. So don't know if it's true or not, but I have a whole bunch of grape leaves because I have one going crazy berserk. But I don't eat the grapes because they have seeds, and I hate eating seeds and grapes. Anyway, so it's more for looks on that one. But the grape leaves, I packed it in at the top on all of the jars. And so we'll see how it turns out in a few days. So have them out on the counter. So that's my new exciting adventure for today. And
Melissa, the pickling doctor.
The pickling doctor. I don't know
pickle doctor.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. I like the challenge doctor. I'm challenged by pickling. How about that? So we'll see how successful that is. But I have a whole bunch of jars from things I've actually just cleaned out some jars and just trying not to always throw things out. So they're perfect. I can just maybe pickle a whole bunch of stuff. So there's my exciting news for the week.
That is exciting. That's cool.
Pickling. Yeah. So why don't you take us out?
It may lead you into all sorts of different things, right? I'll pickle my cucumbers. I'm going to pickle carrots. I'm going to pickle grapes. whatever else you're growing. Who knows? You can
Yeah.
pickle like everything, I think. I don't know.
Well, I think I in my head I have a tablespoon and a half for a quart of water, and so I made it that way. And then I made I made a jar out of chopped up serranos with garlic and onion for my husband. So apparently it's good
so the pickling. What is it? I mean, what is it that you're adding to the water?
It's just salt water, and then you add whatever spices you want if you want to add spices to it, and it just seeps into the liquid. And then I put the grape leaves on top after I filled it in. Needs to be submerged, so it's not exposed to the atmosphere. And then it tells you different ways to something to push down. But if you put a jar, you don't want to completely close it, because the fermenting process, whatever, it can explode the bottle.
Okay.
I was like, I just picked the first thing that I could, find online to know how to, ferment or put cucumbers in a freaking jar and ferment them or pickle them or whatever. So there's probably more elaborate ways of doing it, but I figured, well, I don't want it to go bad, and they're not very high in calories, and they're a great snack, and you could throw them into all kinds of things. So I only made 4 jars, but that was off 3 huge cucumbers. So actually, that's 2 cucumbers. Take that back. I have a third one that I need to cut up. But those cucumbers are so massive. So I actually split it long ways on the cucumber and took a spoon and just slid it down to get all the seeds out. And so I de-seeded it, and then I cut them. So they're like little half spheres, half circles, I guess you could say. So that's how I put them in there. So they can be grabbed easily and snacked on. Yeah. Anywho, so why don't you take us out, since I took us in?
Sure. Well, thank you all for joining us for today on Saturday Salutations for The Change Physician. As always, you can join the community at thechangephysician.com, where at some point we'll start emailing you more frequently and just letting you know what's going on. But we have been not doing that. We do have some plans in the future, particularly things about maybe some meetups or travel things or something to get people out in a place where we can do some change together, or at least be more aware, certainly have some fun. So you can join the community there at changephysician.com. And as always, stay well.
Take care.